Well, actually, the holiday was this past Saturday, and the idea is that a lot of times when I want my sons to go outside, they'll look outside and they'll say, "Mom, nobody's there," and they'll slump back into their chair and go back to some kind of electronics. But I have a feeling that there's kids across the street who are looking out their windows and also saying, "Mom, there's nobody there." I wanted to start a day when all children meet at their local parks, and if they're old enough, if they're young kids, if they're, up to age 7, we would supervise them. But age 8, 9, 10, we leave them there to play with each other, to do that old-fashioned thing that we used to do, which is just hang out with friends and get a ball or get a jump rope. And I was hoping that by having all the kids together in the park on that day at that time, that the next day they would just go and do it automatically the way we used to do.
Now, Lenore, that all sounds pretty rational on the surface, but I heard, now I may have been misled about your story, I heard you take a group of kids, your friends' kids that are similarly minded to you, and take them to Central Park and cut them loose. Is that right?
I'd say if you live near Central Park and that's your local park, yeah, there's a lot of playgrounds in Central Park. It's not just one giant park, although I was there tonight just looking around before I came here, and I did see kids just playing basketball and other kids just kicking a ball around, and I thought that was lovely. I think that that's something great for kids, to have to come up with something to do, to problem solve. I want to play baseball. You want to play soccer. Are we going to compromise? To have fun. Actually, I hate to talk about studies all the time because I don't think parenting needs studies, but studies do show that when kids are on their own playing together, they actually get more exercise. It's better for them than when their parents are with them saying, "Honey, do you need help? Oh, was he bothering you? Can I catch you a grape? Can I peel the grape for you?" It's really great for children when they're on their own.
So what if something happens?
Where do they go?
What if something happens, which is bound to happen?
Right.
And also, I'm sorry, but I can't be the only person that thinks it's insane to leave a 7-year-old out at the park with no supervision. I mean, you're saying there's a group of kids, but you're saying as young as 7 years old, which is barely the age of reason. That's you're right there at the age of reason.
Yeah.
So what if something happens? What if somebody falls and breaks their arm? And there's no parent and no adult around.
Right. A couple of things. First of all, I chose the age of 7 because that's the age that around the world most parents send their children to school on their own, whether by public transportation or walking. If you go to most of, Europe, Asia, Africa, it's age 7, which parents think is an okay age for kids to start heading out on their own. We always tend to think of what I call worst first thinking, rather than thinking of kids playing or coming up with a hide-and-go-seek game or getting some exercise and some fresh air and some memories, some happy childhood memories like we have. We immediately go to, what if somebody breaks an arm? Well, if there's another kid there, that kid calls for help. Generally, somebody has a cell phone these days when they're out there.
So you're just hoping that somebody has a cell phone? I mean...
You guys, let's take calls. Let's see what other callers have to say about this.
Yeah.
Paul in Canada. Go ahead, Paul.
Hi, Drew. Thanks for having me on.
Sure.
Yeah, my 3-year-old plays in our backyard by himself all the time. We kind of spoiled him, got him a really nice sandbox and a big play set.
Yeah, but Paul, playing in your backyard is a lot different than turning him loose in Central Park with 8-year-olds. You know what I'm saying? It's just different. I
get definitely, but he's 3 at this point. I'm sure he'll be at the park by himself when he's 6, 7, 8, or with other kids, obviously. We'd have no problem with that.
Do you live in an obscure northern part of Canada where there's no crime? We're just curious.
I live in Edmonton, Alberta, the murder capital of Canada.
All right, fair enough. Cheers, mate. I'm just saying. To me, it makes me anxious. Maybe it's because I deal with kids who are sexually, physically abused all the time. I had John Walsh sitting on this set saying, "Eyes on all the time, no male babysitters." This is so common. It's a pandemic in our country. And I'll tell you what. Let me just say. I'll let you talk in a second. But let me just say that this is something that has been exponentially increasing, because when someone is a perpetrator, they don't perpetrate on one kid. It's not a one-on-one thing. Somebody's abused in their childhood, they turn to a perpetrator, they do it one time. They do it hundreds of times. And then this thing grows exponentially, and it is a cancer in our society right now, and that's what parents are feeling. That's all I'm saying. What do you think? What do you say to that?
I'm really interested to hear that, because the exponential thing that's been happening is a drop in crime since the time that most of us were kids. and our parents let us go outside and play without always thinking about the broken arm and the predator and the murderer around the corner. Crime is actually down. I know it never feels like that, and I know if you're sitting here after we just saw Nancy Grace and coming up after me is flesh-eating bacteria, it feels like it's a pretty scary world out there. But crime is lower than it was in the 70s and 80s and 90s when our parents let us go out. So the crime rate is lower, but it feels like it's higher because, you know, frankly, when my mom was raising me, she was a stay-at-home mom, and she stayed at home. She didn't feel like she had to come outside with us all the time. And I think the reason that she had that perspective and that calmness that allowed us to have a sort of fun childhood was that she couldn't immediately name, you know, 10 children, and having seen their videos, who were abducted.
I'm not talking about child abducting, though. I'm talking about other forms of covert, or not even covert, but silence. But let's take a call. Julie in Washington, D.C. Go ahead.
Hi. Don't really have a problem so much with free-range parenting, but I do question a couple of things about the event of leaving your kids at the park. The first is timing. This Friday is National Missing Children's Day, and it's a week where, you know, the community of people who work in the area of child protection are trying to educate families on how to keep kids safe, but the crime statistics that are being quoted sort of imply that they don't have any real work to do, and I feel like that sort of dismisses them as being fear-mongers when, in fact, they do really meaningful and important work.
I agree with that.
Totally believe in, I totally agree that we should find all missing children. What I feel like we've been sort of going around the corner on as parents is we're told so much about stranger danger. It rhymes. It sounds like the main thing we have to worry about. In fact, Drew, I'm sure you're aware of this, that 90% or more of the crimes against children are not committed by strangers. They're not pulled off the street. It's things that happen in the home. And so I think to keep our children safe... You're
misquoting that a little bit. It's by somebody they already knew. Somebody who had been perhaps stalking them in the park, somebody who was a neighbor. Stephanie, I'm going to give you a last word here.
I don't understand why it has to be leave your kids at the park all day. You wouldn't leave a 7-year-old at home in your house all day. Well, no, I read that it was from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. All day you want the kids at the park to run and have fun. But why can't they be in the backyard, or why can't they be in front of the house, and why can't there be a parent at home? And why are you thinking that, well, maybe there'll be a responsible person there, or maybe someone will have a cell phone? It just feels like gambling.